All right, let's get into it. Welcome, everybody. So very excited to have this started. So over the past year, I've sort of seen the conversations around AI shift from can I really do this to how do we embed AI into our everyday workflow? As I'm sure many of you in the audience are probably going through the same right now. So that's why today's conversation is very important. It is all about building AI fluency, how to drive AI adoption, and how to get started in the first 90 days, which are very relevant topics for everybody. We have some fantastic leaders on this session as panelists with me today who have personally scaled AI design tools at their individual enterprise. So I'm honored to be joined by Barry McGeough, the Group VP of Innovation and Strategy from the Americo Group. Also, Michelle Middendorf, Senior Manager of Apparel Design from Unrivaled Teamwear. So first things first, let's get started by knowing our panelists a little better and have them introduce themselves. Barry, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me this morning. I am here live from the just completed South by Southwest Festival down in Austin, Texas. Um, I, I always refer to it as Davos for the rest of us. There's a tremendous amount of ideas that come through, sparked by technology, business, science, the creator community. So it's just been a kind of a wild week. So I'll try to stay focused because a lot's happened up here in the last 7 days. But I run the innovation for the Americo Group. We are licensees of brands like Champion and Reebok. And I run two halves of the innovation paradigm. The innovation, so on the raw material side, I refer to as fibers and finishes, and also on the digital side, because as we learned several years ago, nothing isn't digital now. So I run all new ideation through all the operating companies at Americo.
That's awesome. Thanks for Barry. We're excited to hear the fresh of the press insights from South by Southwest. Or Michelle, we'll on to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Middendorf, and I'm representing Unrivaled Teamwear. I lead our product development and design efforts for that team. Our company creates a combination of pro and collegiate decorated sportswear that we sell across a diverse number of markets. We actually came into this with a Raspberry pilot not that long ago that we did for 3 months, and then went into a committed relationship with Raspberry with about, I think, 16 licenses and going strong. The design team out here, from a pure creative point of view, there's about 6 of us. We're located across actually the US, but I'm based in Lenexa, Kansas. So not anywhere near as fun as where Barry's at right now, but it's still a really great city, totally worth visiting.
Absolutely. And thanks for sharing your story, Michelle. We love the partnership with you guys as well. I've seen some fantastic work that your team has produced. So very happy to have you here with us as well. All right. So as we can see, Barry and Michelle have very different backgrounds, but they sort of embark on the same AI journey for their creative teams. So I think that's a perfect segue into our very first question. I think regardless of your background or where you are, we all have that moment when we first get introduced to the concept of AI. So my first question to the panelists is that how did you guys get introduced to the concept of AI in your creative teams?
Michelle, you want to start?
I'm happy to start. We actually had a leader here who was very innovative minded, and he really pushed the organization to investigating AI from a point of view of enabling creativity, which, this is always like such a big concern among creative communities. There's a fear factor, and he really approached it from a how do we do this better? How do we add another tool into the toolbox? So we started investigating AI. It's probably been about 2.5 years ago. And sum total, as an Unrivaled team, we are looking at a lot of different things for a lot of different job functions. But from a pure apparel point of view, from my own personal testing, Raspberry was the first one that truly caught my eye. And we've been very blessed that the leadership here has been very supportive of us investigating and bringing things to the table.
So I will start maybe with a little bit of a story. I'm a unreformed product person. I used to run the product at the North Face and then at Speedo. And so one of the things that we always had to realize is in order for us to get our brands to be ahead of our competition, we had to be innovative. So when I was at the North Face, it was the first time I'd ever been introduced to the idea of things that were wearables, and they wanted to do something called IO gear, which was lights, heating, and cooling in tents, sleeping bags, and backpacks, an interchangeable system. And I didn't know anything about. I just knew about apparel and footwear, and the sort of go-to-market stuff. And I had to really learn about firmware and hardware, and that's when I realized that everything was digital. So fast forward to COVID, we were looking at the inability to have a sales meeting because there was, and so they were really freaked out that if there was no sales meeting, there would be no sales. So within 6 weeks, we worked in Unity because there wasn't sort of the bamboozle drop and drag, virtual showroom. We had to create it in a gaming platform. So to really get into the digital, we really understood that we had to actually do 3D images of footwear and apparel, put them in an environment which was attractive, and then attach that to the ERP system so that you could actually have orders and the business could stay in business. So for me, that was the kind of a really aha moment of thinking, okay, well, there really is a there, but we have to believe it. We have to really believe what we see, that is a shoe that I would buy, right? That is a jacket that I would buy, that sort of 3D visual image visualization. So so kind of fast forward into that, thinking about how AI can implement or enhance that from being just a very nice 3D image. I was at Google for about a year, and I call it my gap year. And I really honestly, if you have a chance to work in Silicon Valley or if you have a chance to work at Google, do it. It was really incredible, and from a lot of other reasons. Where I worked for advanced technology and projects, and they were the people that put together the Levi's trucker jacket, the touch-sensitive Levi's trucker jacket that you could manipulate your phone. But we were looking at enterprise solutions, and I was there. And I had the great good fortune of hearing Sundar Pichai speak. He's really inspiring. And he said, "We are making an announcement today. We are going to be an AI company." And I grabbed my phone and I looked it up because we had to figure out what that was. So then soon thereafter, we started working together on machine learning. So at ATAP, they were trying to figure out how to move things forward and how to teach the model. So I was working with programmers and scientists who were trying to teach a radar how to tell the internal temperature inside your body. Now, those two things are not related. And they were teaching it reinforcement learning. Yes, no, good answer. Keep doing that, keep doing that. And that was my first exposure to ML, to machine learning. And I realized then that there was really something there. But there wasn't this sort of AI boom. And, everybody knows that it's sort of the exponential effect of how AI sort of showed up all at once. So there's a really good sort of lily pad explanation of why that works. I can probably chat about that a little bit in a second. But what we're really starting to see now is the ability to say, yes, we believe it. Yes, we believe it. We knew it was coming. We're working on ML. We're working on the models. We're getting better and better and better. But we still had to do one really important thing. We had to cross the uncanny valley. And the uncanny valley is when you actually do believe that it doesn't look sort of like Robloxy, metaverse, which was promising, but not there yet. What's really interesting right now is that I'm putting my sort of stake in the ground and saying we have actually crossed the uncanny valley. We believe it, and that makes the Gen AI design journey really worth it. And we too have done a pilot with Raspberry with really good results because the ease of which we can do this now does a lot of really good things for all businesses in our industry.
Yep. Thank you guys for sharing that story. I think I see sort of two different paths leading to AI. Michelle is more top down. You have a leader who believed in technology from the get go. Barry, you had a more sort of a bottom up approach that you personally have gone through seeing real examples happening, which is great. I personally, for me, I before Raspberry, I worked at a conversational AI company, which builds virtual assistant for banks. This was before the LM boom triggered AI as well. So back then, this is my intro into machine learning, how to predict someone's intent from a conversation with a virtual assistant. But now I feel the same sort of aha moment once ChatGPT came into the scene. That now the power of just using it to drive the power conversation has gone way beyond. So that same applies to the creative teams as well, who basically have a long process to go through and high pressure and to produce new styles on a regular basis. I think that's also something that we can move on to next is sort of look at the current decision making process, right, for any sort of creative workflows. So Barry and Michelle, if you look at the end-to-end workflow from concepting to design to sampling to fitting and then ultimately to go to market, where does decision making slow down today for you guys, and where do you see AI can remove some of the friction?
I'm going to jump in. So on our side, it was immediately apparent that the concepting part was going to be amazing. So I call it bridging the visual gap. You can be an amazing designer and bring really great illustrations or flats to the table, but being able to use this as a creative medium to really express trims realistically and tools realistically and graphic placements realistically, it just did. It closed that gap between what the creative had in their brain and their intent to their audience, whomever that might be. And that part was truly like, that was like the first unlock. And from a creative team, when we saw what that could do, and when we saw that it could like truly bring our ideas to life realistically in AI, the I believe factor that Barry mentions, that was absolutely real. And that's really when the creative team was like, this is an amazing tool. After that, it really became, how do we take this front part and thread it all the way through to the back end of the process in a way that's meaningful?
Mm.
And that has required a lot of ingenuity, creative thinking, problem solving. They're great problems to have, because there's so many opportunities for savings of different kinds. The reduction of samples, for example, or the reduction of all that shipping. I mean, there's a lot of you know, controversy over AI, but there's also like a sustainability and savings element that isn't talked about quite as much. That visualization, though, I think it's helped the organization in an amazing way. So now, we're relatively new in this journey. Now, we're really working through the processing and embedding of how to do this in the existing workloads with the people who are hands-on.
I would love to
Yeah.
pull on that thread. That's super interesting because I agree with everything you just said. Like I said, I'm here at South by Southwest, and I heard Sandy Carter speak. And Sandy Carter is ex IBM, ex Google, ex Amazon. She's very very interesting. She's very influential, and she was just on stage yesterday, and she talked about how, according to McKinsey, 95% of pilots fail, and then about 54%. And this is the interesting part: 54% of people that try to use an AI tool go back to the analog tool because it's too hard to use. So there's a training aspect.
Mhm.
Are we training our people significantly enough to make that tool sticky? Now, I talked a little bit about the virtual showroom that we did at Wolverine. It was beautiful. I was actually very intuitive. It was very drop and drag. What's super interesting is as soon as COVID ended, all the salespeople decided to get a big piece of luggage, fill it with shoes, get a ticket for Southwest Airlines, and go down and see their customers, or go to see Dick's. It was super, super interesting to see the recidivism that came from the acceptance of digital tools. So I do think and I hope that we're in a better place to be able to see that adoption come up, but improve, because it is a really interesting conversation here, where someone was basically saying, when we know this is going to work, it's almost our responsibility. Like, when will AI be boring? When can we make AI boring again? Right? Because it shouldn't be the topic. It should be the ingredient. And that becomes really, really interesting. So for what I do, unrepentant product person, I had realized that there is a gap in innovation because innovation is really poorly understood. Innovation has because no one defines it, so it is whatever you think it is. So a lot of people that do innovation, sort of big I innovation, they think it's delivering really good ideas that the enterprise will just magically adopt. And the enterprise says innovation is something which makes me money. And they say, no, 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 we're research. And they're saying, no, 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 you have to make revenue. So I have really been pushing and coining the term applied innovation, and applied AI would fall under that. But the idea that innovation carries the product over the line, then make sure that it's absolutely delivered into the enterprise and that it works. So so it's very, very successful paradigm to be able to do that. And that means that when we do things, we're trying different stuff. So in our industry before, there was and still is, I think, a very, very powerful use case for DPC, especially when you're trying to go from design to garment. That's a really interesting problem to solve. A different problem to solve is how can you shorten our lead times, especially on the design side, by running that iterative cycle much, much faster and getting ideations and getting it closer and closer and closer to the mark. Because the problem that we're trying to solve right now, and applied innovation is solving a problem. And the problem is we just have classically and horrifically and painfully long lead times. And so how do we be reactive? How do we let how do we let the buyers be the best designers they want to be? Because we all know that every buyer you've ever met is the best designer you've ever met, right? So how do you iterate against what the buyers want, what the consumer wants? How do you go faster? How do you speed that cycle up and get faster to market and more accurate to market? So this is what we're looking at because we realize now, and again, I'll go back to the innovation lens. There's a really great quote that says that any good innovation is indistinguishable from magic. So this tool, the able to be able to use text to render or text to video through a few set of prompts is magic. It's absolutely magic. And that magic is hopefully is inspiring enough. I think it's going to be sticky for all the reasons I said. We've crossed the uncanny valley. We have the tools. Everyone can type, right? And it is an accelerator for our business cycles.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that you guys both brought the true impact of AI from just, maybe when you first saw it as a concept, it looks very dazzling, but now when it actually comes to applying for your everyday work, ROI is top of mind, right? Whether it's Michelle talking about how to reduce the time for concepting, and or Barry, you mentioning how to speed up time to market.
Yeah.
This is exactly sort of the same mindset when we work with our customers as well, right? To make sure that this is not just a test. We want to see real impact and real embedment of the tool into workflow. Just going off what you guys said earlier in terms of people tend to go back to the old ways. I'm just curious, from your experience, why do you think that happens? Like, why do you think people are sometimes going back to the old habit, even though they've seen the amazing results from a newer technology?
Because I'm just going to keep going back to South by because I've been here all week. One of the things that one of the speakers, Mike Beitel, talked about is that generally speaking, we're seeing the exponential growth of technology, right? But we're not seeing the exponential growth of the human. Our internal firmware is not moving as fast as software and hardware because we're basically the same. We revert to what we know. There's something that I find really fascinating is something called the Dunbar number. In the late 50s, early 60s, a Professor Dunbar realized that we can only handle so much. So essentially, what he came up with is, as humans, we can handle 5 intimate connections. That's it. Our family. We can handle about 15 good friends, and we can handle about 150 people that we know. The problem right now is that the number of people that we can be connected to on LinkedIn is 20 times that much. So we get overwhelmed and we revert. So we need our tools to be easy. because they have to fit inside Dunbar's paradox, which is how can we actually get that in here and have that actually be sticky and useful and not so novel that we reject it.
Yep.
I would have a little bit of a different take on it. I think a lot of times when people are shopping AI or considering AI, and there's definitely a magic component to that, there's no doubt about it. They expect that you use it in place of other things,
Mm,
right? And that's really not what we found. One of the things that we talk about over here is the layering of technology and the layering of ability. It doesn't mean you have to completely move entirely away from the things that you're familiar with. You're using this as an additional tool, an additional medium, an additional way of expressing your design intent. And so, I have a few designers who are very comfortable prompting for concept. That's great. I have another designer who still likes to do her Adobe Illustrator sketch first and gets her thought process put together, and then she goes into the AI. And both are okay. Those I don't need to control those pathways. Like however you're inspired, and however make this tool work for you as a designer and us as an organization, we can work with. So a lot of the things we talk about are this is just building out your skill set and your repertoire, right? It's leveraging all of the different tools that we bring to the table. And we try to maintain a very flexible mindset. We call it mentally nimble over here, where you're moving from Illustrator into Raspberry over into Photoshop using Browseware and 3D build tools. And you're literally moving across all of these different medium all the time to get the build outs, to get your intent visibly real for your audience. And I think that's really important for people to understand. This isn't like a lone wolf thing. This isn't like a one size fits all. You give your people the flexibility to figure out how to use it. Once you can show what it brings to the table, I think people understand it and they grasp it. They just have to grasp it in their own way. And
I
my
think that's
other,
really well
okay,
put. That's really well put.
thank you. I was going to say I liken this to when we switched from hand-drawn flats to Adobe Illustrator Creative Cloud. Like immediately, you knew how much more useful Creative Cloud would be for recoloring and quick changes and things. But it was hard initially to move off of that hand-drawn thing until you really understood what that technology could bring to the table.
Mhm.
We're at the same precipice point. Now it's just AI can do some of these things better than what Creative Cloud has been able to provide previously or in different ways, but they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I think I see the same experience. I see everybody going back and forth between the tool, and I
Mhm.
think the hack to get around Dunbar's number is the ease with which the tool can be used and learned. And I
I-
think that's the unlock because I know, like having implemented DPC into large organizations, it's hard.
Mhm.
It's super hard to start with the body form and then figure out the layering. It's like it's learning another language. It's like, learning Python. If you're not a coder, then that's really, really hard. So I think the ease with which the tool can be used really helps the adoption and get over that and does make it more sticky. And we are seeing people that are moving back and forth pretty seamlessly between the tool. There was, and I will say one thing there is a great hunger from an organizational point of view. There is a great hunger for people to have access to learning new AI tools. And we have seen some super users. I mean, one of our super users generated over 4,000 units in like 3 weeks, like images. And they were going crazy. People really want to learn the new tool. It's so from an enterprise perspective, yes, we want to improve and increase speed to market. From a user point of view, uh, people are encouraged, especially when it's easy enough to understand, and it's not like learning a foreign language.
Yeah, I think these are fantastic takes on the subject. I like both of you sort of address different perspectives of the problem. I think Barry approached this from a sort of a human psyche perspective, like fundamentally how we approach change. I think
Mhm.
Michelle, you share your experience in terms of how to create, as leaders, how to create a safe environment, a safe and encouraging environment for everybody to have the room to learn and try and embed into their workflow. That's also like something we observe as well, just from from a partner perspective is that obviously we're iterating on our product to make sure the UI is very much intuitive, people can learn, is not a huge lift. Also shout out to our enablement team who are all fashion designers themselves. They are the hand-holding piece that we make sure that all designers can learn from designers. I think that creates a very safe environment for them as well. Yeah, I mean, I think as humans, we're just naturally resistant to change. Like it always take effort. Which is why we need leaders like you guys in place to help provide that safe environment so they can learn. Yeah, so that's very insightful. I do want to go off of the power user comment Barry mentioned, right? I think this is also sort of the question I have next for you guys in terms of drive adoption across the team, right? So obviously, both of you work in large organizations, multiple teams. Each teams have their own, strength and weakness. So, how do you guys address some of the challenges in terms of driving team-wide adoption when you first introduced AI to the creative teams?
I'll jump in. So when we started down this path, we used the pilots program and its outputs actually to really begin that conversation. And maybe this is a ridiculous analogy, but I kind of feel like it's testing a child with a new food. It takes 3 tries. Like you have to kind of keep getting it out there in front of people and you keep making it more and more digestible for them to understand the benefits. And then, actually like sitting down with people and working on a visualization project, like those were some of the first things that we did. Even in the pilot, we were reaching out to partner teams, trying to encapsulate maybe some of their workflow or work scope in what we were doing in the pilot. So we were like building the conversation literally from the start. I do think we have a fortunate situation out here where leadership is um, friendly to innovation and supportive to innovation, so it makes the conversations easier. But then, just in working with the people who were initially given the licenses, um, it really became this, like, I don't know, really interesting brainstorming, crosstalk situation. Because it was really on my team and another team that works on go-to-market imaging. And the build out from that was really awesome. And so there's been this whole change dynamic that has really started to happen over here, and it's feeding itself now, which is beautiful.
Mm.
I do, I give a lot of credit to some of what Raspberry's put in place in terms of our edu sessions, like to make sure we can answer questions, and there's a forum for that. I think there's always going to be super users who are insanely gifted and can just figure out AI and be out there on their own. But I felt like Raspberry's approach helped with some of that more intuitive, supportive thing that we as humans and creators tend to gravitate to, right? Like we love our creator communities. That's so we have our own little kind of almost Raspberry AI creator community within Unrivaled, and I think it really is. It has momentum. It keeps feeding. It keeps growing, and that's a really good thing.
Maybe that's, I mean, part of the fact of one of the truisms about the AI hype is that people feel left behind, and so they want to catch up. And Michelle, I agree with what you say that, I mean, the creator community is always going to be very, very interested in new tools.
Mhm.
So because it's a new sandbox. It's a new place to play, a new way to create. And what we have found is that the pilot process, it does really work, and I want to kind of like double tap on that one because it was actually really successful for us as well. In the innovation process, typically you figure out the problem to solve, and then you figure out who your potential solution providers are, and then you do a narrowing down process, and then you continue to down select to the solution that works best for the enterprise. So, I mean, for me as an innovator, I have to take my personal opinion out of it because it's really about it's not about the tool that I think is best. I learned a long time ago that you should always fall in love with the problem and not the solution. So, and that helps deliver something to the enterprise that they accept. So by the time it comes down to making the decision, it was their decision and they like it. So the body accepts the organ. Um, so it is really important to get the right tool that everybody likes and wants to use and wants to lean into. The process has been very, very bottoms up. And that means that it's not the organization forcing down an AI policy that is sort of an inch wide and a mile deep, or sorry, an inch deep and a mile wide. But it's really been organic. And so that really also helps the adoption because they're into it. They really, really like it. And they say, this is the tool that we like. So that has really, really helped with adoption and use. Um, so yeah,
Yep.
I definitely agree. It is a fun new sandbox for everybody. So from the enterprise perspective, we're faster to market and we're better to market. We get better presentations to buyers. We let the buyers have input. We can do it on the fly. Really, really interesting be able to have this tool set that we just didn't have a few years ago.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. I think I've seen both approach, maybe more of a top-down approach versus bottom-up. I think we mentioned this a couple times now.
Yeah.
Either one can work, right? I think, but I think the core here, I think you both touch on this, is your empathy towards the users. You put yourself in the user's shoes. I think at the
Mm.
end of the day, right, you need to have, whether it's a power user or a small group of power users, that's where the magic happens, is that you truly found the fit for them. There's a few people who realize, oh, I do want to use this, right? Another thing we sort of saw across our clients is that uh, this type of pilot innovation also foster collaboration. So some designer teams may not be talking to each other prior to trying this thing together. Now we've seen some power users, when they start showing their work to others who might be still a little hesitant in adopting AI tools, that's really when we really move the needle. Is that people say, oh, like my peer designers are showing amazing work, in their sales presentation or internal design review meetings. What can I do it? So they would rather learn from their peers versus a manager or a provider, right? I think that's where, like Michelle, going back to what you were saying about the sense of community, I think that's really where the power users start to have this service amplifier, right, when it comes to cross team adoption. So, but yeah, I wholeheartedly agree that us leaders, your empathy to the users, whether this mandate comes from top down or bottom up, I think that's really what defines a success for a pilot.
Mhm.
One more question I want to discuss with you guys as well, which is the first 90 days, right? I think that's sort of the typical time frame when we look at a pilot on an enterprise level. So just based on your experience during the first 90 days, what do you normally standardize versus what you leave flexible?
Um, I can talk about what we did. So the pilot for us was 3 people across 30 days. And we basically mapped out all of the different areas that we thought had the possibility of AI having influence. And our goal was to test it. And we did this in a different way. I think in a lot of companies, this may have lived with an innovation team. This actually lived with the hands-on team. And what we ended up doing was choosing to do real work. So we kind of like went live, even in the pilot, which was a different approach, maybe not recommended, excuse me, but it worked for us actually really well because I think the advantage it had is it immediately made not just the people doing the pilot or like my immediate team understand how impactful this could be. It really became a talking point with partner teams as well. And so like our merchandising partners and it just like kept growing every time somebody saw another visual. And then for companies like ours, where we're dealing with multi-brands, immediately, immediately it became so amazing that we could make all the different brands completely brand right from the very beginning of concept creation. And so there was no confusing one person's work with another because of what they were working on. Like literally, it was visually identified, and the storytelling behind it was immediate. And really, like that part was amazing. And so while this pilot was testing a lot of different things and it was originating on this team, the conversation just started rolling out literally across the organization immediately. So our first 90 days, we were doing a lot of demos of our work to partner teams. We did them, I think we did at least three, probably one per quarter, as well as some exterior partner teams too, who were interested in what we were doing, bringing to the table. And it was like a very dynamic and a little scary moment just because people's expectations went from 0 to 360. Like it was overnight, like, what more can we do? What more can we do? How much more can we take on? So it was really kind of, and it has been a little bit of a Wild West show, but like in the best possible way. Like you always say, it's the good problems to have. These are like some of the more creative and fun problems that we've been working through, like how to manage the expectations.
Yeah. That's the
There is like
phenomenon of magic.
it is that it is the or and the other thing that people think it's the easy button. It is not the easy button. It takes technique and time to get to those visuals that you want. But if you give it the technique and the time, you can get there. And then there truly is magic. Anyway,
Well,
Barry, over to you.
no, I love it. You know, it's more of a conversation. Maybe you had this too, but I think that one thing is prompt engineering cannot be overlooked
Mhm.
because it's not. I'm terrible at it. I'm the worst. But you know, sometimes people are using AI to help them with the prompt and then do the prompt. But that
Right.
actually does. You know, it can be garbage in, garbage out. So there's a lot to teach. And so I will put my answer, Zhao, to the whole process of innovation. The process of applied innovation is to really have a lot of radical transparency because if something happens in a back room or a closed laboratory, if people don't see it, it didn't happen. And so one of the things that you know, and innovation is always the champion of a new idea coming into the enterprise, whatever it is. And so innovation has to fight a lot harder to be able to land the plane, to actually get it delivered, because that's the only measure of success. Was it delivered? Did it make it into the enterprise successful? Did it improve my business in some demonstrable way? Process, revenue, and this is the really, really important parts. So the only way that it actually works is if you really daylight the whole thing. So in any pilot, as with this one, radical transparency, letting leaders know what is happening and show them the results. And there's Fortunately, this one's very visual. So you can see something which is really, really good and improves over time as that engineering gets better. You can see the users getting better, and then they catch fire, right? And then they get inspired, and then all of a sudden heads are nodding in the right direction, and then that makes it easy to adopt. So the first 90 days for me in any project is to apply the applied innovation rule of radical transparency to make sure that everybody knows what's happening all along the way, so that that plane can land. And that really is the most important thing for me, and has been very, very successful in this case as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think both of you touched on the fact that you're not doing this solo, right? Especially in enterprise, you need to have the right stakeholders involved early, right? I think one of the things we also seen that that should be standardized in the beginning was sort of the governance structure, right? Who's going to be working with alongside you guys to push this forward? You need your IT partners, you need executive sponsors. You might also need other champions from the designer teams to work with you. So wholeheartedly agree with that approach. So we do have some questions from the audience. Let me see. This one's actually related to what we just discussing just now. So Catherine is asking, how do we track the change or reduction in speed to product or speed to market for your teams? I think it just comes down to how do you guys track that ROI?
Super good question. We're it so in all these technology, it is early days. We expect to see faster to market. If in more reactive companies, one of the KPIs is, for instance, if you're presenting to a buyer and you get to yes, that's a KPI. Now the ROI can be measured, and so building it into the timeline to say this is the tool and we're going to shorten the lead time, that I don't think that's happened with a lot of people yet because I think it is early days. That is the expectation. So the expectation also for human efficiency inside the organization is also there at all C-suite levels. So we're going to have to really try and understand what that curve looks like. A lot of people in other industries have overcorrected and like gotten rid of whole teams and then 6 months later hired them all back. So there's a lot of course correction in the whole idea around AI. But yes, tracking KPIs and then looking at ROI. Did this increase order size? Did this increase velocity? Um, are we able as an industry to be able to take these synthetic video images and use them in other places that can affect selling, like PDP, like marketing? Do we have to how will we navigate the New York Act that's going through that says that if you're using a synthetic person in media, you have to disclose it? We're This is early days, Zhao. We're that in that respect, where we can use it, how it monetizes, how do we're actually building those structures now as an industry. So that it's a great question. I always call it. Everybody wants to know the answer to the test. You know,
Exactly.
what's the answer to the
Uh,
test?
Michelle, what do you think?
I'm going to take a simplified approach and really just speak to this from like a product development team perspective. So on this side, where there's some easy gains, have been a creative team developing Raspberry images, working with their tech team. And immediately, like again, bridging that visual gap, you can have a better conversation about volume, proportion, ratio, because you're not looking at a flat, you're looking at a more well-developed visual, even down to wash effect and where you're trying to get particular effects or fabric texture drops or whatever it may be. Your conversations between creative and technical, much more easy to get it right the first time. Getting it right the first time is like an art form. It's like the holy grail, right, of what we do, like not having to go back in and retouch everything. And it is early days and we're not there yet, but we do have some instances of this coming through. Sharing those AIs, even with a vendor base, actually can be very helpful in
Very,
bridging the visual gap and the conversation gap and the
very
understanding
much
gap.
so.
So that's a huge advantage. Letting these AIs be part of visual line plans helps your merch team. So like
Yes.
it's spider webbing is actually quite real. And once you're in it, you can actually see like how much it can affect not just the development team, but all the partner teams that go with it. Even down to planning out catalogs and web imaging. Like you're having those conversations much earlier and much more upfront. And I just want to state, like, for the record, we never went into this saying AI was going to replace 100% of everything. We
Yeah.
never we never operated under that as a philosophy. We just always said it was going to help us be a lot better, a lot faster,
Yep.
and it might help
Agreed.
with 70% of something, and there would always be 30% that was going to require a different path or more touch or whatever it may be. And I think that's the other thing people do need to understand. Like, again, it's not an all or nothing. It is not a replacement. It's a build out or a build on for
I
Yep.
visual.
totally agree. It should be a superpower. It's an and,
Mhm.
not an either.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. I love that analogy a lot. This is also something that we're observing from our clients as well. Is that you have to work with your partners, whether from a go-to-market side or supplier side, right? Understand what they measure us the improvement. Then you get involved in these conversations. If you use AI assets in a sales presentation, right? How much did you get booked after the meeting without using as many physical samples? I think Michelle, you mentioned that. So yeah,
Mhm.
like this is also something that we we work very closely on with our partners to help them establish a baseline in the beginning and help them measure this impact over the course of the pilot. So we have a couple more questions from the audience, but unfortunately, I think we're running out of time. So first, I want to thank you, Barry and Michelle, for your candor and leadership. It's been such a treat getting to hear your experience and sort of how far you guys taking your organizations on this AI journey. And for the audience, if today sort of sparks ideas or questions specific to your organization, we're happy to continue the conversation. So our team is always open to sharing more what we're seeing across the industry. So you can get a demo with us with a link in the chat. I think Kanisha will drop a link in the chat for you guys to put some time with us. Or you can follow up with us after the session with your questions. So I want to thank you, all of you, for investing time. And like I said, keep your eyes out for your inbox for the recording link and any additional resources. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you, Barry, Michelle, again.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.